time. It's our time, my friends. Time for millions of maturepreneurs, 55 plus, who are hashtag not done by a long shot, to revolutionize how we lead, do business, and innovate our world. I'm your host, Jeanette Anderson, and welcome to my conversations with fascinating people who would rather inspire than retire. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Maturepreneur Podcast for those who are hashtag not done by a long shot. And if you are too inspired to retire, you are in the right place, because today I'm going to be talking to Jackie Brown about all sorts of things related to going back to work, if that is your juice and your joy, and how do you deal with the coming out of an employment situation. What are some of the things that you need to know about staying happy and healthy at this age stage, as you age, stage, and at this stage of life? So finding meaningful success in the second half or the third quarter, or whatever you define this as, of your life. Welcome, Jackie. I'm glad you're here.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Jeanette. Thank you.
Awesome. And Jackie is joining us all the way from Alabama. I'm currently in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which is occasionally home for me. And so, Jackie, I'm going to tell you her official bio and information about her, and then we're going to dive in and get the juicy tidbits, and then really talk about what does success mean and how do we create it now. So, after 30 years in advertising, Jackie became frustrated with her career, yearning for a deeper, more positive impact. Through deep inner work on her strengths, values, and purpose, she discovered coaching as the vehicle for creating the impact she craved. Jackie shifted from helping businesses grow to helping people grow. Her decades of experience communicating with various levels of leadership to uncover and connect core values, goals, and intentions for businesses is now helping dissatisfied professionals find meaningful momentum in their career. She's an International Coaching Federation ACC level coach. So we'll talk about that in just a second. So she is the woman with the answers to how do you reinvent yourself? All right, so congratulations on that. Now that tells us about you, about your professional background and so forth, but you know how we roll. We want to know the juicy tidbits behind, the juicier the better. So tell me something that no one would guess about you in a million years. In fact, maybe even your friends don't know this. What would that be?
So I am a gardening geek. I'm always picking out the dirt from my fingernails. I have 16 beautiful acres here at the border of Tennessee and Alabama. So lots of rolling hills, lush greenery. We have a pasture ornament named Star. She's a horse. So yes, I absolutely love being outside when I'm not diving into professional and personal development.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, that's one of my lovely avocations as well, is the personal development. I used to like gardening a little bit, but now that I live a mobile lifestyle, the most that I do is if I'm house sitting, I water other people's plants or whatever.
Right.
But every once in a while, it's nice to get into the dirt and play and replant some flowers or something like that. One of the hardest things, actually, a little side segue of becoming fully mobile, I sold my house and everything I own about 9 years ago, is what I used to have big, beautiful plants like trees in my house. I had 3 or 4 huge ficuses. And I came home from a trip one time and I was like, that's it. I got to sell my house if I want to have the lifestyle I want. And I looked at my plants and I burst into tears, Jackie. And I was like, I love my plants. I don't want to leave. And so I kind of sniffled and I thought for a minute and I thought, really? You can't have your ideal life because of a ficus? Seriously? That's really what's going to stop you? I'm pretty sure they have plants other places. I'm pretty sure there's some foliage you can go and commune with. So, but it was really the hardest thing about selling my house and all my stuff and downsizing was actually my plants. My books and my music and my hobbies were also very hard, but I think the plants were the hardest. Anyways, okay, that aside. So from one gardening geek to another, I get the love of plants and all things green. So tell me a little bit about why you're interested in this work, and then just kind of general, what's your purpose in general?
So part of that transition for me was asking myself, what is my purpose? I mean, it's absolutely something that I felt like was needing to get answered. So going through that whole process, I think I really realized that it feels better to me not to have a purpose in life, that there's one true calling. But what if we just look at what's the purpose for this stage of my life and see if that at least gets me moving in a positive direction? And
Right.
that is certainly what helped me, was to just take it from something that felt so big and so important to, hey, let's just take a look at the next, 30 minutes or 30 days and at least move forward a little bit. So what that led me to was how much I really love connecting with people in a positive, kind, and curious way. I am always asking questions. You know, those little toddlers that are asking why all the time, I never grew out of it. I'm still asking questions.
Okay, I can
And,
relate to that for sure.
right.
Um, and so you're curious about people, but how does that tie in? So this is your current expression of that. How has that kind of shown up as your purpose throughout your life? How is that expressed throughout your life?
Yes, so it really played into my graphic design and creative direction, the advertising part, as I was really curious about the product or the service that my client was looking to sell. I was curious about the trends in the marketplace and in the industry. So
Mhm.
that curiosity was really expressed that way through that portion of my career. It's also certainly something that I see, in gardening, for instance, or whatever hobby I'm into. I really get curious about, my golf game, for instance. I'm always looking at how I can improve my swing,
Mhm.
or what is this plant and how can I grow it in my garden? So that curiosity, I can absolutely see that thread throughout my entire life, and in one stage of the career, and now I'm using it in this stage too.
Right. So, and as that little kid, when you were really curious, what was the thing you were kind of trying to solve or find out? Was it just something you were born, this innate curiosity?
I believe it is something that I was born with. My parents certainly encouraged it. When I would ask questions, they would not give me the answers, but encourage me to go find the answers.
Sure.
Uh, so I think that was an amazing way for them to treat it. And they probably did it out of frustration too. Instead of just saying, I don't know, go look it up. They
Yeah.
were a little bit more kind about it. But I think that actually did help me to really find the answers on my own and dig deep into however deep I wanted to go with it. So
Okay.
yes, absolutely. I think it's one of those innate strengths or talents that I didn't even realize I had, honestly, until this transition point in my own, midlife really helped me see it with a new perspective.
Okay. So you've been in business for a while yourself, but you've only been coaching for the past year and a half, a little bit more. What was your business originally? What did you move from and to specifically originally?
So I had been a creative director for hire. The most recent version of that was to help credit unions and community banks with their advertising campaigns and marketing materials.
Okay.
So it's definitely a pretty big switch to go from working with banks to now working with people.
Yeah. Well, presumably you're working with the people at the banks, but yes,
Exactly.
general public. Okay. So and what prompted you to shift the business now? So what is your business model now?
So now it is more consumer oriented. instead of B2B, it's now B2C.
Mhm.
So that's probably the biggest shift in terms of how I operate my business and how I go about connecting with my clients.
Yeah.
So that's very different. But like you said, the conversations that I'm having tend to be very similar, and the way I go about the conversations. And that's actually the thing when I've got very frustrated with the creative direction. I really saw that the part that I wasn't frustrated with that actually did bring me joy were those client conversations. They'd
Mm,
come back and say, I just feel so much more confident going into my executive meeting because of how you helped me.
mm,
And it wasn't just that the campaign we did together was great. It was how we were able to boost their confidence, give them some resilience, through our work together.
yeah.
So that was the thing that really told me, why don't you explore coaching? And it's been an amazing fit.
Awesome. So I want to kind of recap or break down what I'm hearing are the steps behind that. So you were doing work that you loved. You were doing it initially in corporate and then moved into your own business, doing work that you loved and that you were skilled at and that you knew how to do. But then you started to really pay attention to what are the parts of it that light me up? What are the aspects of the work that I do that are really meaningful or significant for me? And then how do I do more of that in what I'm doing? How do I not stay a slave to my skills, but move into my strengths? Which is a bit different than they may or may not be the same, right? Or they might lead you in a different direction. Is that,
Absolutely.
yeah. So
Absolutely.
a big clue for all of you who are listening, because for instance, I had a business marketing 4 iterations of my company, my marketing business. And at one point, I was doing a lot of work with technical community and technical businesses. So like you, I was doing a lot of B2B marketing, consulting, and work in that realm. I could speak geek, I could translate strategy and kind of work in that realm. And after 8 years of doing consulting in that field, marketing and business development related, I kind of went, you know what? These are not my people anymore. Like they're not. I can do this. I get paid very well for it because it was a very unique and targeted niche, but they're not really my people. So I left, even though it was very lucrative, to go and connect with my people who are more entrepreneurs. And so listening to this, what I'm hoping you're hearing, ladies and gentlemen, is listen to the longing, follow the longing, not necessarily the logic. And our
Mhm.
logic will have us go in the direction of our skills and our experience and what we know. Our longing will have us go in the direction of what fills our cup. And later in life, that matters even more. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the yearning for success and a different kind of success in the second half of our life or in this stage. What's that about for you? What do you see as the difference at this stage?
So one of the key areas that I feel like was a huge difference for me is something that you just talked about, how to turn away from our skills. It was a huge moment for me when I read about the difference between skills versus wisdom, and that as we age, we can actually get stronger in the wisdom capabilities,
Mhm.
while our strengths part of the brain is actually, feeling frustrated. It still works and we can still learn new skills for sure, but
Mhm.
it's not moving as quickly or it's not moving in the same way that it used to. And that's exactly what was happening to me is I lost all interest in my skills of design and creative direction.
Mhm.
But what was really lighting me up was using the wisdom part of my experiences and bringing all that to bear. That really helped me see that I did have a path forward when I learned about, the technical or scientific differences and what was happening there. So
Yeah.
I, totally agree with you that leaning into our wisdom is a great way to move forward, and especially as we, look to see what is meaningful to us. What does success mean to each of us at this stage? Because it's going to be different, that's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So, what do you mean by wisdom? Because I know some very wise young people and some very not wise or downright stupid older people. So, wisdom and age don't necessarily go together, folks. So, what do you mean by wisdom?
So wisdom is the ability to make these different connections that we've um, experienced throughout our life and that we've also learned. So people who are able to use the wisdom part of our brains are very adept at seeing those connections across a wide variety of experiences and learned attributes. It's similar to a library, you know, as we age and we accumulate all these experiences and they get shelved in the library. So then that librarian, our wisdom, is able to move among the shelves a lot faster as we age, and they'll start pulling together a stack of books. You know, when somebody brings us a problem or a situation, we can more quickly pull out that stack of books and say, this is what my wisdom is showing to be a viable solution or approach that, you know, we might talk about with somebody else.
That's really interesting analogy, and it actually, I'm going to take us on a slight segue for just a moment
Yeah,
because I saw this illustration at an event recently, a healthy aging event, where a woman was describing the experience of dementia. My mom had dementia, and unless you've had it, of course, we don't know what the experience is like. We know what it's like on this side. But the illustration she had was of a bookshelf, which is what made me think of this. And
yeah,
that when you are, as you're older, you have a very full bookshelf. It's got lots of books on there, lots of experience, lots of wisdom, lots of areas of know-how and skills. And as we move into dementia, first there's books missing from different sections. And then as you get a little further along, there's whole sections missing from the bookshelf. And then the last slide was the books, the shelves had collapsed, and all the books that were left were in a jumble. And it really made it clear when I thought about my mom's experience and what it was like, how that would feel. Like when you go to the bookshelf and that book's not there. And when you go to the bookshelf and that whole section's not there. And then when everything is just collapsed and confusing, it just really made me get it at a heart and head level. And so,
yeah,
just as an aside, not related
yeah.
to this topic at all, I just thought it was worth sharing because I thought it was probably the clearest illustration I had seen of that. Let's come back to happier bookshelves
Okay.
and our bookshelves of skills and wisdom. Okay, so when someone is trying to figure out, like especially when we're transitioning out of an existing role. So, and we're going through the who am I if I'm not my career? Who am I if I'm not a mother after, 30 years or whatever? Who am I if I'm not a this or a that? Um, and or where, a lot of people are coming to the end of a whole lifetime of being an employee. Oh my God,
Right.
how do I become an entrepreneur? Because that may be the only option for me. Or how do I, become employed? There are so many questions at this stage of self-definition, but also what's next? How do I do that? Let's talk first about the self-definition, then we'll talk about the how do we make those leaps. What's the biggest challenge that you see people going through when they're going through this definition or moving from one stage to the other?
I see people really feeling attached to their roles. And it's something that I've heard called a performance-based identity. And that really is sticking with me as I work with my clients and certainly in my own experience. I closely identified as a creative director. It made me feel like one of the cool kids when I would introduce myself that way.
Yeah.
So to not do that all of a sudden was, as you said, it was such a shock. But I knew I was going to be more uncomfortable if I stayed a creative director than moving forward, even if I didn't know what that was.
Mm-hmm.
So what if we instead identify ourselves through our purpose, through our strengths and talents? Then that way, if something does happen, and things can happen overnight, we can wake up and get laid off, or we can wake up and be a widow. These roles can absolutely change without any of our own permission, really. I mean, I made the choice not to be a creative director anymore, but some people may not have that. So the less that we can identify with our performance or our roles, then it seems like that would open the door for us to be more confident and resilient throughout whatever changes come to our way, and that we then have more control over what we can shape to be our identities.
I love that, and the clarity around purpose-based versus performance-based identity and how we define ourselves. But what about, Jackie, for all those people who have no clue what their purpose is? Like,
Right.
I'm on fire and and passionate about being the maturepreneur maverick, 1,000% committed to creating a world for these people who don't have a community
Mhm.
and a container and an incubator for birthing their purpose, for putting
Mhm.
that into the world, from profiting from it. Many of them haven't got a clue when you say what's your purpose. They just kind of look at you, tilt their head, and go, I don't know. So
Absolutely. And I was right there. I felt like I had to have that one purpose, or what was my work. And through all that investigation, all the study and research, I found a purpose, again, for this stage of our life, to be something that is more manageable and achievable, approachable. And there's even a formula of sorts that I encourage people to give a shot. Let's just see how this purpose formula might shape up how I make some decisions in my, future. So the formula is starting with the strengths and talents that we love using as we interact with other people.
okay.
So for instance, if somebody has an artistic talent, then they love sharing their art with other people. If somebody is the person that we all go to bring some humor into our day, bring a little levity, then that's a talent and a strength that as they interact with other people. For me, I look at my curiosity as a strength that I love using when I interact with people. I also use my kindness. That's one of my top values. And so I wrap kind curiosity into the strength and value that I love using when I interact with people.
Right.
The second part of the formula I'd love people to consider is what their ideal world looks like. So this is rainbows and unicorns. How are people interacting with each other?
Mhm.
And then take these two and combine them together. So for instance, my purpose for this stage of my life is that I am kindly curious as I illuminate people's brilliance so they can bring love and light to their communities. So that second half, people in their communities are bringing love and light to each other. That's that ideal world that I would love to see someday. And then the first half is I am kindly curious as I help people. I illuminate their brilliance so that they can go help make that ideal world more of a reality. So
Okay.
it's a formula that I think helps people wrap their arms around what the heck is my purpose?
Yes.
Let's just chunk it into these little sections and see if that gets us going into that, meaningful momentum.
Yeah. And I think that's a really nice, simple approach in terms of you can make a list of strengths, you can make a list of talents. Now, many of you may struggle with, well, I don't know what my talents and skills are, or my talents and strengths are. Get a grip, stop being humble, just write them down. And if you're really not clear, go ask people around you, what are my talents, what are my strengths, the skills, sorry, your strengths, and then what's that ideal unicorn and rainbow world. It's kind of similar to approach I take. I'm one of my titles is the why whisperer, and I'm really fascinated with what people's why is, why they do what they do. Now, my definition of it is that our why is consistent throughout our life, our purpose is consistent, but how we live into it, how we express it changes. I call that our stand. So you define it slightly differently. Folks adopt whichever one makes sense to you and fits in your brain. You talk about the purpose just changing at different stages, kind of similar, same result.
Yes.
What I call it is the intersection between what we're healing from our past, or what we came here to learn, and what we long for the future for ourselves and other people. So your strengths and skills and talents assessment and the unicorn rainbow world is that piece around really clarifying, what do you long for the future? And
Yes.
your own personal growth introspection work is the piece where you really looked at, what do I need to heal? What am I here to learn? How do I have that inform or be part of what I'm creating and moving forward? So I think we're, different pews, same church.
Oh, absolutely. So close. And, there are several assessments that can help people with the strengths and talents. And then certainly, I think being a part of a support system can help hold a mirror up. I mean, that's what I tell my coaching clients all the time is I'm the mirror that you hold up when you need to see the back of your outfit. I help you see your whole self.
That's a great line, great definition. I love that. And so if someone is moving from performance, and I agree, sometimes it's really hard to see our own purpose. I call it, I liken it to, it's right on the end of your nose. And so we can't see the things right on the end of our nose. Or it's like water to a fish. They can't see the water. They just are being in this space. So if you don't know, get help. Get someone like Jackie, someone like me, who can help you pull your hand back from the end of your nose and take a look at it, because it's really challenging for us to do for ourselves. I do this for a living and I can't do it for myself. So I would encourage you to get support, reach out to Jackie and have someone who is a really good listener for that longing and that yearning, so that they can reflect that back to you. That's one of the beautiful things about having a coach. So once they figure out their purpose, now what? How do they monetize that? How do they figure out how to get a job based on that? Because it's one thing to know, okay, here's my purpose. I love connecting with people and helping them be the light. Great. How do I make money from that?
Yes, that's certainly a huge challenge. Absolutely. I absolutely, you're seeing a lot of data points about how important it is to take as much control of that ourselves as we move into the age areas that we're seeing in the corporate workspace. So I love the work that you're doing to really support people in doing what they can to build their businesses so that they have as much control themselves. So it's really interesting to think about how we can then take our purpose and find that balance so that we can bring in some revenue and income. A lot of times, what I'm seeing in my clients is they might be in a job already, but they don't feel like it does express who they are. So they find side projects to test it out, to see what it's like to work in this space. For instance, I had a client who she was in marketing, but she was really looking to explore the HR and training space. So she worked with the HR department and just took on a few projects at work. And then she also started taking on projects as a side hustle. So it was a way for her to test it without burning everything down to the ground.
Yeah.
So that's certainly something that I recommend is, if you are considering a pivot like this, then to do it as much as you can without a detriment to the finances and the stability that are, can be really important.
Right. Why is it so important for people to find meaningful work? Why do you think it's so? Because there's a lot of people who say, well, I've just got 3 more years. I just got to grind it out 5 more years. I've got to whatever. And for them, the thought of potentially letting that go or, exiting early or whatever makes them like get the heebie-jeebies and stay in a place that they're not happy. Why is it important for them to explore the meaning aspect of their life?
Well, we're certainly seeing a lot of studies and data about how the more satisfied and happy that we feel and the better that we can express ourselves instead of hiding it, then that certainly plays out in having a healthier life, and certainly a happier life can really bring a lot of positive, I mean, I always call it positive energy, but I mean, the data is really showing us that our health really improves when we can lower the stress and increase the smiles, so that's certainly a huge area to be considered about, is the health benefits of reducing our stress and increasing our happiness.
Yeah, for sure. I heard a statistic and I'm trying to remember where it was from, but I can't. But I think it was the Canadian government site that those who have purpose when they quote unquote retire or later in life um, live a qualitative 7 years longer than those that don't. So that means that not only qualitative, meaning healthier, but also happier and more vital.
Yeah.
So having purpose will literally add good years to your life. Not having purpose takes those years off. And adding loneliness in, by the way, takes an additional 8 years off your life. So, really important to have connections, really important to have something you're moving towards, something that's meaningful for you. Human beings are meaning making machines. We need meaning to be happy. So, we need to really rediscover for many people what that is. And so, let's talk about the application of that, because one of the things that when we do find what's meaningful for us or something that fills our cups is finding the courage to make the leap. So, how did you do that? How did you let go of the bag of peanuts so you could pick up the bag of cashews?
Oh, goodness. So I love that. The bag of peanuts were, I mean, tasting pretty awful. So, I think there's certainly a level of uncomfortableness that people have to experience themselves. We tend to grow the most when we move through those more uncomfortable moments. And so the pain of whatever I was going through at that point was not nearly as appealing as moving away from that pain. So taking the leap for me was the really the one of the highlights I remember, I guess, is the day that I changed my LinkedIn bio. That was certainly one of the moments that I was like, well, this is it. I'm going to do this thing. And then from that was the point that I started to pursue the coaching work instead of the creative direction work. So taking that leap was huge, and I certainly owe a lot to my own support system, my family and friends, and those who really believed in, what I was wanting to do and gave me that encouragement to keep doing it, to keep moving forward with it. So the support system was huge, and knowing that staying where I was not an option. I was miserable. I was crying at night, just feeling so irrelevant, that the work I was doing wasn't making a hill of beans, maybe to a bank and some stakeholders, but not the kind of meaning that I was wanting to have as a legacy, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's a great way to say that and think about it. So you mentioned support structure, really super important, folks. Don't try and do this alone, um, because we all, need a hand to hold when we make those leaps, and it helps to have people who can help us do those leaps a little more advisedly, a little more securely. So not don't just burn your boat necessarily. Make sure you've got to back up. When you first, because this was a while ago for you, but when you first made the leap from employee to entrepreneur, what was the hardest part of that for you?
Oh, the hardest part, wow, that's taking me back. It's really an interesting story about the time before that, or so I had spent 8 years working at a credit union, and then I went from the credit union's marketing department to a marketing agency. And that move was actually more of a jump than from the marketing agency to being self-employed. So the credit union had great benefits. I could have stayed there forever if I had wanted to. It was super stable. So moving from that to a marketing agency of just two other people that had no stability whatsoever. And sure enough, within 6 months, it was starting to fold. So that leap from going to an employee to self-employed wasn't all that huge, because I was already doing a lot of the grind work of being self-employed. I was just doing it for somebody else. And then that's when my husband and I were like, let's just, put your name on it instead of theirs, because I was essentially doing the same type of work.
Because really, you did go from employee to entrepreneur with that small firm, because that wasn't really employment. It was more like self-employment. You just happened to be someone else taking some of the money. So how did you, what did you need to shift in your mind to be able to make that leap? Because you mentioned, I'm letting go of security, I'm letting go of benefits, I'm letting go of all this. So what was the thing that got you to say, yeah, I'm going to let that go?
It really, to me, came back to the values that I was wanting to move forward with. The values that I was seeing at the credit union and that I was able to express or not express were not lining up. I see that now. At that point, I didn't really understand what it was, but it just felt like it wasn't a place for me anymore. And now I really see that it was the values that helped me take that leap. The values of being able to keep learning, to do work that I felt like I was going to have an impact with. I was one of many at the credit union, and at the marketing agency, I was one of just a few. So, again, it was being able to have some of that autonomy, but, it goes back to the values, absolutely. That could be a value system that somebody else wouldn't find as important to make a big change like that. So that's what I really encourage my clients to do, and friends and family who are considering transitions or pivots, is to go deep into the value system of where you're working and what you want to be able to express moving forward.
Yeah, and the values as they are lived into, not as they are espoused, because there's a lot of organizations and even individuals who have a list of values that are the corporate values or that are my personal values. But when you look at how they're living, they're not in alignment. And so most often people get really stressed and strained when there's a misalignment with the espoused values, including our own. So what tools or resources do you recommend that people use to articulate or clarify what their values are?
So again, there are assessments that can help us get started with that. When I'm speaking to groups, I have a really wonderful 3-minute exercise that helps people respond to this list of values on a gut level. Because it's timed and you're just looking at them really quickly, then picking out the ones that you respond to at least gives people a running start. And then I encourage people to kind of test that list of values so that they see, are these the ones that I'm actually living? Are these the ones that are helpful as I make decisions? And how important are they to me when some of these decisions come up? And, I have clients that say, well, my family is important to me. That's high on my value list. Well, that's table stakes, but let's look a little deeper and go beyond family and think about adventure or travel or mobility, about where you live, for instance, being able to escape the Canadian winters, or being able to have a horse. That certainly ties me to our land. So that's that value system helps us make some of these decisions about, is it time for me to take a vacation, and what kind of vacation? What kind of job or workplace is going to be important to me and line up with how I want to run my business? And that's one of the things I love about coaching. I saw in marketing that I was not lining up with those values anymore. It was certainly more about coercing people into making decisions. And here in coaching, I'm guiding people, collaborating together. And it's just a huge shift in the value system. And I feel much more aligned this way.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think and it is important to again to drill down on this because for instance, I was thinking we might both have because I was just having a conversation with a client of mine and her top value is freedom. But freedom is still not clearly defined enough. That's like family,
Yeah.
it's too broad. So
Yeah.
for me, freedom means the ability to be able to not be here when in the winter when I'm pathologically allergic to it, and having the freedom to be able to work wherever I choose is important to me. For you, freedom might be having the ability and the time and space to be able to go ride your horse because you feel totally free when you're riding your horse. So you being tied to land is not my version of freedom. My version of freedom of being able to move around but not be able to hop on the back of the horse and go and have that experience is not your definition of freedom. So how do values look when lived into for you will help you really not have them be just a word, but have them be something you can action on.
Yes, and I love the distinction there between the values that you can act on and the values that move us forward. Because there's also values that we want to avoid as well. That I'd rather have us moving towards the aspirational values instead of being avoiding the values that keep us in a more negative space.
Right. Okay. Well, and you mentioned earlier about the whole thing of moving out of sometimes we move out of quite often we moved out of situations because of pain. We move away from what we don't want. Some people are moving towards people who are really motivated by the vision that pulls them forward or what the aspirational goals or whatever. Most of us are a combination of both, and it's really important to know which one are you. But for most of us, many people back into their business or their new life because they're backing away from what they don't want. What's a way to flip that? Because, like, a really practical way, because sometimes we know what we don't want, but we don't know what we do want. So, how do you help people flip that? So, let's say, for example, my why for a long time was I want to end the BS story of not enough. That's great, but it's a what I don't want. It took me a long time to understand that the opposite of that for me was, well, what seemed like a very long time, was that I want people to get that they matter. It's not enoughness. It wasn't where it, I want people to get that they matter. That's the opposite of the not enough story for me. How do you suggest people find what they do want if all they know right now is what they don't want?
So there's a couple of options that I love people to explore. And the first is to follow their curiosities, to go down the rabbit holes that they naturally are asking about or looking into. Another way to look at it is to follow your fascination, because a lot of times these are much more helpful than following our passions. Our passions, a lot of times people look to that as a way, how can I turn my passion into profit? Which is good to some extent, but a lot of times those passions can flame in and out. And a lot of times if your passion becomes something that is tied to profit, then you start to lose your interest in that passion or hobby. So curiosities, and this is all nuanced, but curiosities are very similar to passions, but a lot of times they can really motivate us or drive us forward a lot further along than our passions. There's oh my God, the flow state, and I'm trying to remember. It's a
The book by, yeah, it's called
so
Flow.
Yes, so there's I was just at a conference about the flow state, gave a talk there, and one of the other speakers really does a lot of work with Stephen Kotler, and his books are amazing and really lean into the science of why following our curiosities can get us further along than just following our passions.
Yeah.
So I really encourage people to lean into what you're already interested in. It doesn't have to be a passion, but what are these cattle trails? Speaking of the horses and the farms around here, the cattle tend to go up and down the same paths. Well, we as humans tend to do that as well with the same types of activities or interests that the TV shows that we watch, the things that we're Googling can help guide us into what might be next.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And if it feels like a jumble to you of here's a bunch of things that I'm fascinated with, and here's some of my strengths and my talents, how do I put that together? That's likely where you need to call in some other people who can see for you how that might intersect in a way that brings you to that sweet spot of who you want to be in the world and what you want to do. By the way, the book Flow is by a guy whose name I could never pronounce and still can't, but the first name is Mihaly, Mihaly or Mihaly, and then the last name has almost the whole alphabet in it. I think.
So I was taught to say it that it's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi,
Oh,
the father of flow. That's not it exactly, but I love the flow state. It's an absolutely amazing process to look into as people are curious about what kind of work might help them find that state of flow.
yeah, awesome. So speaking of finding support and resources, how do people find out more about you or connect with you?
Great. So my website is shiftingsuccess.com. I want people to shift success from their hands, their being the corporate world, to your hands. So shiftingsuccess.com. I'm also very active on LinkedIn. You can type in the search bar Jackie Brown Coach, and it should come up with my profile there. I'm posting 3 or 4 times a week. I do book reviews every other week on LinkedIn. So those are the 2 best ways to find out more about me and my approaches and programs.
Okay, awesome. And you have a free gift for listeners. So what is that free gift?
It's a workbook that will help boost a career if you're feeling bored, burnt out, or bitter. And it has some of these resources that we've talked about today, your strengths, values, and purpose. So there's some information in there about how to work through some of those formulas and see if that helps people feel less burnt out, bored, or bitter.
Okay, and it's a good thing to not be burnt out, bored, or bitter. And so, what's if you had a piece of advice for someone who's listening who might still be in corporate and wants to um, decide what's next? Where's the starting point? What's the very first step they should take? Like that'll take them 10 minutes now.
If they had 10 minutes right now, I would point them to the Clifton Strengths Finder. That's my favorite assessment for getting a handle on our strengths. The ones that I found through there, I can absolutely see throughout my entire life, and they've just been expressed in different ways throughout my career. So that would be the very first step I would recommend to people, and then go into your values and your purpose.
Okay, great. So some self-exploration of where you at and how that might translate into next steps. Now, what if somebody is not in corporate, they've been an entrepreneur for a little while, and they're maybe struggling with how to define success now on their terms? What do I, kind of a different kind of reinvention. Would you suggest they start in the same place? What would you suggest for them?
So if an entrepreneur is looking to clarify their version of success, then I would absolutely suggest a lot of support systems. Coaching is the first thing that comes to mind. because it's a lot of exploring what's important to them. Is it the impact that they're having with their clients or with their business? Is it the way that they're able to express or not express who they are? So it's getting really clear about what's important to them and how they want to move forward and how is it reflecting on the type of person they want to be.
Right. Yeah, and I think sometimes we lose sight in the day-to-day doing of our business of that unicorn and rainbow possibility. So maybe represencing that. Am I moving towards my ideal life, career, job, business, etc., whatever they fill in the blank. If you haven't revisited your rainbow and unicorn vision for a while, it might be time to do that. And I think I've heard you say a number of times along the way, Jackie, and I couldn't agree more, that support is super important. It is so hard for us to take the stuff that's on the end of our nose and see it and make sense of it. So for sure, you want to hire a coach like Jackie, like me, find the coach that resonates with you, and that is dedicated to the stage you're at. So if you are exploring what is success for me, what do I want to do next? What is that leap right now? How do I explore who I want to be and the values that I want to live into? Then for sure reach out to Jackie, because that's her juice and her jam and what she's really good at and what she has invested in learning how to help people with. If you're at a different stage where you want to figure out how to scale your business using automation, she's probably not the right coach for you, right? So
that's right.
That is right for you. And speaking of which, the other thing that everybody needs is support, is community. So please do check out the maturepreneur.world, maturepreneur, so maturepreneur.world. Where we have the upcoming event, the Maturepreneur Conference in the fall in Canada. We have the network, which is a community of people who are on this journey of inquiring, what does success look like for me now? Who do I want to be in the world? What's the difference I want to make? And how do I live into that in a way that helps me earn or give or both? And so please do check out Maturepreneur World, join the network, create a community of people who, like you, are committed to creating the second half as the best half. So, Jackie, what's one last piece of advice you'd like to leave everyone with on this topic?
Oh, just lean into your strengths. That will absolutely help you create the impact that you're craving.
Beautiful. And really, truly, impact is what we are here for, to whatever that looks like for you, my friend, because you matter. Your voice matters in the choir. It's not as sweet without you. We will put Jackie's contact information and that resource that she mentioned about how to go from being bored, burned out, and bitter to happy about your life, how to boost your career and your thinking in the show notes. So please do check those out. Please do reach out. Please do call in support. It is time for you to be the difference that only you can be, my friends. Bye for now. Thank you for listening. I'd love it if you left a comment and subscribed. And I encourage you to apply one aha from this interview right away so you can turn your wisdom into wealth and your contribution into positive change. Bye for now.